Hi, thanks very much for clicking on the video link. This is an idle chat. My name is Natalie. This is my guest, Bob Berliner. How are you, Bob?
I am just fine, Natalie. It's great to be here. Thank you for including me.
Of course, it's my pleasure to have you. So, Bob, you and I have been in the neutral space for decades, 30 years,
Well,
60,
you have been for 30 years. For me, it's more like 15 or so. I'm a relative newcomer.
just a baby then.
Yeah, I'm a babe, exactly. A babe in who wants to learn.
We all want to learn. We all want to learn. But now I want to learn from you some of the answers to these cards, if you don't mind, sir.
I'd be glad to answer to the best of my ability, Natalie.
All right. Bob, what is your favorite smell?
My favorite smell is chocolate ice cream,
Yeah, man.
especially dark chocolate.
Nice. Good choice.
And my other second favorite smell is the smell of my bread baking in my oven. But but I really prefer I mean, if I had to pick one or the other, I'd take the chocolate ice cream.
Both happy smells. I like that.
Yes, definitely.
Good happy smells. Bob, what is the coldest you've ever been?
Ooh, the coldest I've ever been. Probably on the bridge of my submarine in the North Atlantic on patrol. And I'm not sure that's the lowest temperature I've ever been, but we used to go on patrol in January. And when we were on the surface and the wind was blowing, I would sometimes go up there. I wasn't qualified to be the officer of the deck on the surface, but I would go up there and the wind would be blowing. And you can imagine, you can imagine what the North Atlantic is like in January. And when the wind is blowing and you're going through the sea at 25 knots or whatever we were doing, it's cold. And I'm not sure that's literally the coldest I've ever been, but it felt that way.
But it's the wet cold. It's that chill that
It's wet, it's
permeates.
cold, and it's blowy. And you just feel it through your bones. And the foul weather gear that they give you doesn't, it helps, but it doesn't insulate you purely.
Mm, yeah, that that's cold. That is
It's
cold.
cold.
Bob, what was the last photograph you took?
Well, the last photograph I took was something I sent to my wife because we were trying to figure something out, and I don't remember what it was we were trying to figure out, but we were trying to figure out how something worked. And I sent it to her because she's much better at figuring out how things work than I am. And I think the photograph helped her identify it, but I don't remember exactly what it was. And frankly, it's probably just as well that I don't remember. She would probably be disgusted if I really did.
It's nice to have tech backup.
She's she's a tech whiz. Um she's with a company and is an advisor to chief information officers of companies, and she's really good at it. She's my, I'm the house counsel, she's the house tech guru.
Good team.
Yeah, it works. It works so
It,
far
it,
anyway, for sure.
it's a good team.
Yes,
Bob, are you a fan of movies, my friend?
not terribly. No,
Not
not
terribly.
really. No.
No.
We're more sports fans. We watch baseball.
Who's your
Um,
sports? Who's your team,
we-
rather?
the Cubs, Chicago Cubs mostly, but we're really more baseball fans than specific Cubs fans. But we were lucky. We were at some of in 2016 when the Cubs won the World Series. We were lucky to be at the deciding game of that and a bunch of the playoff games as well. So
Oh, cool.
it's and I play baseball, so baseball's in my blood, and it's communicative, so it's to a certain extent in hers as well.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. All right. Sir, who would you nominate to have their own reality TV show?
Greg Counsell, the manager of the Chicago Cubs.
That
Hey,
would be a great show.
hey, what can I tell you?
I would watch that show. That would be a great show.
I don't know if anybody'd watch it except me, but I would.
Sports fans everywhere.
Well, I guess. Okay.
Absolutely. Bob, if you owned a restaurant, what kind of food would you serve?
Oh, French. French food, no question. Oh yeah, well, it would be a cafe. Um, there's a restaurant in Chicago that we go to occasionally called Bistronomics. There's another one called Le Sud. That's that kind of food. We also frequent a restaurant called Brindy, which is very, very, very high end, and it's really because the owners became friends of ours. Um, I don't think I'd be that ambitious, but it would be very, very low key cafe style, bistro
Nothing
style.
too, yeah, nothing too bougie. We
No,
have a cafe down the street that uses the original architecture's medieval kitchen, and they still grill your steak on the fire. There's a
that
fire.
sounds like my kind of a place.
Best, the
That
best,
sounds
the simplest, cleanest,
sounds
best.
great. Sounds
That's the
great.
that's the kind of French food we eat in Normandy. Sir, is there anything that was super cool when you were young, but is definitely not cool now?
Um, yeah, some of the words certainly aren't. Like I dig it. I don't think anybody ever says that now. Are you digging it? No, Yeah, if anybody said, "Are you digging it?" they'd be thinking you were talking about a hole in the ground. Um, uh, that's certainly something. Bell-bottom pants, I suppose. Which I never wore then, and I certainly wouldn't wear now. Um, I guess those couple of things that occur to me. I'm sure
Yeah,
there's a lot more. At my age, you forget you forget what you went through 50 years ago and isn't cool anymore. But those are
I,
those are some things that jump out at me.
I suppose 8-track tapes.
Yeah, I suppose 8-track tapes, VHS and that stuff, but I wasn't really much into those things anyway, really. I mean, we did have them, but um it wasn't of great use to us.
Yeah. Banana seats on bicycles, those don't need to come back.
There you go.
There's there's a few things that could just stay there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
In your opinion, sir, what is scarier, snakes or spiders?
I don't find either terribly scary. Because the kinds of spiders that are really scary aren't around anywhere I go. And the same is true for the same kinds of snakes. Um, I suppose my experience with snakes is probably a little scarier because when I was a kid, I went birding with my parents one day. I was probably about 12, and I was walking on the path of this C&O Canal outside Washington, D.C. And all of a sudden, my parents said, look down, and I was stepping on a black snake. And there he was, just curled up, and I had walked on him. I suppose that's the closest I've ever been to a scary experience with a snake or a spider. So I'll say snakes.
Poor little thing. Fair
Yeah,
answer,
he
but
was
poor
pretty
little
big.
thing.
He was pretty big. We used to catch garter snakes in our backyard, and they were, totally harmless. But okay.
Right. Yeah, it depends on the snake and it depends on the spider.
Yeah, I've never been close to a rattlesnake. I've never been close to a scorpion or a similar kind of, and up in this climate, you'd have to look pretty far and wide to find poisonous snake or a poisonous spider, if you could. There might
I've
be
been
some water
close to,
moccasins.
yeah, I've been close to both, and both are actually really good on a plate.
Oh, really?
Tasty
Well,
food.
that I haven't tried. Wait a minute. I remember now. You're right. I went out to a meeting in Boulder, Colorado, and as part of, I was presenting on some subject to a group of lawyers, real estate lawyers. And I remember the next last night, we had dinner at a place called the Flagstaff Inn, which is up on the hill. You could see all the way to Denver. It's really cool. And I think they served us rattlesnake, and it was delicious. And I remember that. I haven't had it since though. I'd have to go back to the Flagstaff Inn, I suspect, if it's still there.
Yep, I like them both. Insects and reptiles.
Okay.
Good choice. Sir, what do you do when you're having trouble falling asleep?
I get up and read, but it
What do
doesn't
you
happen
read?
very, yeah, it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah,
I get
what
up
are
and
you
read
reading in the middle of the night?
I read something as not innocuous as possible. Sports Illustrated is a good thing to read. Um, Occasionally I'll read yesterday's newspaper if I haven't finished it. But I try to make it very undemanding. And today these days I find the newspaper relatively undemanding. And I certainly find Sports Illustrated undemanding.
Which is
But
a
it's very rare. I very rarely have trouble falling asleep. Really, really rarely.
You're lucky that way. Very lucky that way. Next card. Would you rather live in a mansion but be forced to stay inside said mansion, or live in a tiny house and be able to travel anywhere in the world?
The latter for sure. Oh no, I don't want to. Frankly, I wouldn't want the upkeep of a mansion anyway, even if I could leave it. But but I definitely would rather be able to leave and travel and experience traveling. One of my favorite books that I've ever read is called Blue Highways. And it's written by a fellow, it was probably written 30 or 40 years ago. And his theory was he wanted to travel around the United States driving only on roads that were blue. Here's something that's obsolete from my childhood. Only were blue on a road map. And that's not quite obsolete, but that theory is definitely, but the theory is absolutely right. And my son and I, and now my wife and I have traveled around the country. And when we get off the interstate and drive on those roads, it is such an experience. And I wouldn't have given that up for the biggest, I wouldn't have given up for Mar-a-Lago. It's an experience that it was so enriching. And I don't want to be tied to a place where I feel I have to be there or it's going to fall apart around me. I want to be able to throw away the key, not literally, but figuratively, and leave and go somewhere and maybe not even have a destination.
Those are the best road trips. And
Absolutely.
I agree. Get on the D road, stay off the auto route. And when you see something off in the distance and that curiosity kicks in, you say, I don't know what it is. Let's not on the map.
Exactly.
Let's go.
See that sign for that little town over there? We're going to go check it out.
Yep.
And some of the experiences we've had, I can still remember when we were going through, my wife and I think we were in Montana. It was either Montana or Idaho, years ago. We were just I don't remember where we were going. We had a destination. And we drove this little town, and there's this little shop there that had the most extraordinary, I don't remember whether it was books or food or something, but it was extraordinary. And if you go on the interstate, you never see that kind of stuff. And you never talk to the people we've met in some of these places. It's an experience I wouldn't trade for anything.
It is absolutely worth it. So, Bob, let me ask you the last question, the same question that I ask everybody as the last question. And that is, what do you love most about the work that we do in the resolution industry?
Oh, helping people resolve their problems. And the satisfaction you get when it's done and you've brought peace to a situation where people are at war. And I think I get them. There are two kinds of things that it's true of anything in the mediation world, but there's two situations where it's particularly vivid to me. One is what I do in one of our suburban counties. I run a program. I started and now run a program that does pro bono to the parties mediation in small claims and eviction court. A lot of our cases are people who are not represented by lawyers. And the peace you bring to those people when they can put these things behind them, facing something a system that makes no sense to normal people, makes sense to lawyers, but not to normal people. And the peace that they experience when it's behind them is a reward beyond dollars. And the other situation that is particularly satisfying is family business disputes, which are emotional, difficult, costly in money and in relationships. And when those things get resolved, it is so satisfying. I'm not saying there's ever a mediation resolution that isn't satisfying, but those are two of the ones where it's easy to articulate the satisfaction and what makes it distinctive. It's always satisfying to help people resolve a dispute. Those are just two of the high points. I think that's what I really enjoy. And it's nice to have the challenge of the intellectual challenge and the emotional challenge of relating to people and getting them to understand how to get something behind them. And
Right.
we're not always successful, but most of the time.
It is good work that you do. It is really good. If somebody wanted to reach out and talk to you or communicate with you or hire you for some assistance, what's the best way for them to find you?
They should go to my website, which is berlinergroup.com, and it has my phone number, my email, and my cell number. Best place to reach me is either email or cell number, but I would strongly suggest that if they're interested in finding out about me, my website's the place to look. It tells more about me than I can tell them over the phone. And I think, they'll get a sense of what I do and how qualified I am to do what I do.
It does leave out the part about how much you love chocolate ice cream, but
Well, they can find that out by taking me out to the appropriate place after they hire me, or we'll bring it in. I can still remember a mediation a few years ago when I was mediating for a family business dispute. And we got everybody together and they insisted that I bring in Dove bars. Of course. Who would we brought in Dove bars. And it brought peace.
there you go. I got one of my first big clients via ice cream. This attorney that I really wanted to work for had an assistant who was a powerhouse of a gatekeeper. And I would call to try to introduce myself, call to try to set up a lunch, call, and there was no getting past this woman. And finally, one day, I stopped asking questions and I started listening. And she was just overburdened, overworked, unappreciated, just that person. And so I drove up to Gelson's, grabbed a pint of chocolate chip Haagen-Dazs, and drove it over to the office and walked it in and introduced myself and set it down on her desk. And she nearly burst into tears that somebody, would bring her a little bit of a sussy. And I got to work with that attorney. She let me pass for that.
That's great. That's a great strategy.
Ice cream is magical stuff.
Oh yeah. It's yes. And your choice of ice cream was right on. Chocolate. Yep. Chocolate fudge brownie and Jenny's dark chocolate. Yep.
Now, yeah, I'm hungry now. Oh, Bob, thank you so much for joining me for an idle chat. It's been an absolute pleasure and joy chatting with you about.
The joy has been mine.
The idle.
Natalie, it really has. The joy has been totally mine, and I'm glad you enjoyed it too.
Thanks very much.